12 minutes past 5 a.m., Tuesday morning, Camden, New Jersey, 1989. A 14-year-old girl in labor, my mother. The way I entered the world was unconventional, a C-section. And if I thought that was unique, then I was in for a long ride. I was a child of my decade in the 90s. I wore Bugle Boy, wore Jordans, Carl Kanai, FUBU, all the typical 90s things. I wouldn't say I had a huge impact from music, but I do remember the first time I saw my mother cry was in 96 when Tupac died. In the 90s, things were fairly normal for the most part. I still remember, recess as a kid, collecting the most popsicle sticks to try to run, who could run the fastest. I do remember, certain things that did have a profound effect on me, such as one, um, as a child in, elementary school, parent-teacher days, not realizing that I came from a dysfunctional family because I didn't have a father. That's one thing that, stood out to me. But also another thing was that regardless of what was going on, I've always felt, even from that age, that I was more of a spectator and observer of my life than actually living my life. Even at a young age, I felt that lack of belonging. Um, Obviously, it would grow and fester over time, but I believe that's when it started. That's exactly when it started. I do remember a lot of great details, though. I remember, you know, on Saturday mornings when we had to clean, my mother would play gospel music like Fred Hammond, the Winans sisters, the Winans brothers, Donnie McClurkin, Mary. Like, I do remember, I have fond memories of that. I do remember playing sports as a child, but I was the eldest of my siblings at the time. The amount of siblings I had at the time, I was the eldest. And there were certain responsibilities I had. Um, and like I said, those would grow also. Towards the end of the 90s is when my family gravitated more towards um, Christianity or um, organized religion, I guess you can say. I think that my mother already was a Christian, or she grew up being a Christian, but that's when myself and my sisters were introduced to Christianity. And that would in itself add another layer to my sense of not belonging, but also add another layer to our lives. At the end of the decade, a new millennium started, and everyone knows about Y2K. It was supposedly the end of the world, but that didn't happen. The early 2000s were uh, really, really fast. I mean, everyone remembers that fateful day, September 11th, 2001. I think I was a fifth grader, and I was in class, and I remember the teacher uh, having tears in her eyes. Normally, she would have tears in her eyes because, you know, I was acting up, but this time it was different. It was, one of the darkest days of our nation's history. And that moment going forward, I think it really shaped the generation of millennials, especially me. I already didn't feel as though I had an identity as an individual, but I was still young, so I still had time to grow into it, but I didn't feel like I had one. I already didn't feel like I had an identity as a, I guess you could say, black child or black person. And now mixed into this is, attack on my nation. So I guess I was supposed to feel American, through tragedy. I guess tragedy united us and made everyone feel that way. At that point, I still felt as though I was an observer of my life, that I was watching my life play out and I was a supporting cast member. Um, like I said, the 9/11 attacks, the terror attacks, and then our introduction into religion just added layers to that. As we get closer to the 2010s, growing up in post 9/11, America was a little different. Also, trying to find my identity as an individual. Um, I was active in, our church. I did different things. I played sports. I don't. I didn't really feel connected to any of it. You know, I didn't feel connected to anything. I didn't. The reason that I stayed in places, not to get too far ahead, but the reason that I stayed in most places was because I was anchored there. I was anchored there by people that I was either with or jobs, right? Obviously, being in Virginia for so long, I lived with my family. You know, that's where we grew up. Um, Later on in South Carolina, I was there because of my ex-wife. North Carolina, Fort Bragg, I was there because of the military. Georgia, I was there because of the military. No place that I've ever been has been because I've wanted to be there. It's mostly because I was anchored because of who I was connected to. And you know, one of the, I just, I just couldn't, I just couldn't escape that feeling. I couldn't escape that feeling. And naturally, I started doing things that I felt as though was the proper thing to do. Finished school, I went to college. College really didn't do anything for me. It didn't, you know, take that feeling away. Um, I didn't necessarily feel enlightened going to college. I didn't feel as though I even wanted to be there. I felt as though it was the next logical thing to do. It was a responsible thing to do after high school is go to college. After that, I worked a string of different jobs, mostly just fitness related jobs. So I got into personal training. I got into fitness. I did find out that I had a skill of connecting with people. That was one thing that I did find out. I was really great at connecting with people, and I learned that through personal training. I learned that I had the ability to adapt around different environments. I had the ability to, you know, empathize with people that are different than me. I had the ability to connect with people who are different from me, who come from different walks of life. And that's one skill that I actually learned that I had. I picked up on that. And even still, I didn't feel like I was connected to anything. I don't know if it was a feeling of emptiness or, you know, if it was a lack of, you know, contentment, if I felt like I want more, I can't explain it. It was just an empty feeling. Um, I remember being in church and being extremely depressed. And no matter how many messages came across the pulpit, no one could ever tell that I was depressed. It seemed as though God was speaking about everything except for what was going on with me. And after that, I joined the military. I joined the military to reestablish myself, but also because I wanted to be a part of something bigger than myself. I joined the military. I joined the United States Army infantry. I went on to get my, you know, airborne wings, become a paratrooper. I tried out for a few other realms, didn't make it. My military, my military career was was good. It taught me a lot of lessons about life. It taught me a lot about long suffering. It taught me a lot about, you know, calmness under pressure. It taught me a lot about self assessment. You know what I'm saying? Being honest with yourself. You know, I guess you can say a bit of introspection, right? Like it taught me to look inward, to criticize before I look outward, you know? And that was a lesson that, you know, helped me obviously further along in life. Um, and after I left the military, I met my ex-wife. And to be brief, um, we looked great together, but we weren't great on paper. I felt as though I was present. I was physically present there, but I was somewhere else. You know, no one else had my heart or anything like that, but I don't know, I felt like I was floating off into space. But my body was physically present at, you know, in my home in South Carolina. Um, I don't think people really talk about that feeling of, you know, that lack of belonging and how that can really affect you as an individual. I don't think most people even know what it feels like. Um, Even afterwards, I, I joined the fire department. Before I joined the fire department, I enrolled in a school and for cybersecurity. And I did that because we wanted to start a family. So I wanted to, you know, secure, you know what I'm saying, a career that would allow me to, you know, comfortably have a family and support a family. And while I was in school, I got extremely bored, so I had to do something with my hands, and I became a firefighter. Becoming a firefighter didn't feel like a calling. It felt more like it was something else to do, you know? Again, did not feel like I belonged, did not feel anchored. Well, I felt anchored there because I got invited there by somebody from the gym, but it's not necessarily that I felt as though it was my purpose or calling to do so. I was just there. I had nothing else to do. Why not? Um, and at the dissolution of my marriage, I've always had this desire to travel, right? To be anywhere other than where I currently was. And traveling makes that, a lot easier. So I packed up my things, no obligations whatsoever, no children, nothing. I packed up my things and I moved to Bangkok, Thailand. Now I moved to Bangkok, Thailand, and I wasn't escaping anything. I did hope to feel something different, but I didn't necessarily feel anything different. And the truth is, wherever you go, there you are. So there's no escaping who you are no matter where you go. And all of my problems, that sense of, you know, emptiness, that sense of not belonging, it followed me to Thailand. I love Thailand. Thailand's a great place. It's an amazing place. I couldn't I couldn't if when I set out to travel, my biggest mistake was traveling here first before I went to other places because I don't want to leave. But I can be honest and say that it has not brought me the joy that I thought I would feel. And part of me knew that. Part of me knew that, being a logical person, just because I change location doesn't mean I'm going to feel differently, right? It's just a different climate. And that's true. I don't feel any different. I feel a lot more happier because happiness comes from happenings. But I guess to narrow it down, why I left America, I didn't feel connected to anything there outside of my family, you know? Other than that, besides my family kept me anchored there. If I had not moved, I would have stayed with my family. But leaving America was more so leaving a system of ideas, right? Or like a system of broken promises, right? I'm not one of those people that feel like I can blame the direction of my life on the country I grew up in. I actually love my country. I just think that everything that my country represents at the moment and in the past few decades, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like type of place where, you know, anyone would want to be. Politics are what they are. I don't make my decision about my life. I don't make decisions about my life on external, you know, uh, outcomes, not necessarily because of politics, but just see the direction that it's going. I mean, constantly on the news, there's fear mongering, there's propaganda, there's hate, vitriol. It's nasty business. Um, you can't escape your national identity. Your national identity is tied to who you are. That's one thing that I did learn. Like I said before, the 9/11 attacks, they pretty much solidified our place in history as Americans. We were united by a tragedy, right? Even being that young, I understood that my country was under attack and that people were threatening my way of life. I understood that completely. And I was young. No one had to tell me that. It's just something that you picked up on. Um, but yes, I don't think that, you know, the direction of the country is something that I want to be a part of at the moment. And it's not because of who's president, who's not president. It just seems like everything's going down in the dumpster fire. I know moving away does not change any of my circumstances or how I'm affected based on the direction that my country goes. So I'm not one of those people that believe that if I move away, my problems will be solved, you know? So this video is more so about why I left America physically versus like, I guess you could say this video, I guess this video is more so about why I left America physically versus ideologically, you know? Uh, Pretty much that's what it sums up to. I guess I'm searching for something. I don't know what I'm searching for. I feel as though I'm supposed to be looking for something and I don't know what I'm looking for and I don't even know if I'll find it, to be completely honest with you. My, my story isn't about, my story isn't about chasing My story isn't about leaving America. It's about chasing belonging. Uh, Something I never truly felt growing up, and maybe that's what we're all looking for: a place to belong, a place where we can call home.